Okay.
Hello, Aristo. I'll say it again.
Good morning, Ron. How are you? How is the
Well,
sound?
the sound is okay. How am I? I'm feeling quite stressed.
I can imagine. I've been seeing your, just going through your videos and some of the other stuff that you've written, and I can understand it very well. Although I've been, not in this topic, but generally, if you're involved in anything controversial on the internet, it's going to happen. If you represent a point of view and you really believe that point of view and you're in the minority, this is what you're going to confront. And that's obvious, of course. But the good thing that we've always said, on various forums is that when you're engaged in a written dialogue as opposed to a verbal dialogue, you don't have to, you can actually take time to think about what you're saying. And you can actually rant and rave all you want, express the emotion or whatever before writing anything. And basically using the point of view of the other person as a meditation. And even if you can consider it a meditation on the shadow, it, because even though the shadow need not be some evil, bad, hurtful thing, it's basically whatever opposes us, whatever polarizes to us. So it can be an absolute shadow, which means it's devoid of life and all of this and fragmented and wounded, or it can be a relative shadow based on human points of view. Everybody believes the light shines behind them or from them, and because your point of view is basically where you are conscious, where your own light is focused, and that is going to generate a shadow with respect to the opposing point of view. It's like an eclipse, and people always viewed eclipses as ominous events because the eclipse revealed to them the shadow of the moon, the shadow of their own subconscious, of the global subconscious even. It triggered that kind of feeling. Animals freak out during eclipses, they kind of disappear, it gets quiet, and human beings also. So, as we've said before, you see what's going on is many theoretical notions are being about spirituality and all that stuff passing through. We are now putting them into application and realizing just how fucking hard that is, and just how difficult it is to ground anything spiritual. I mean, let alone all of heaven on earth. To ground anything really spiritual is a pain in the butt. And this isn't going, it's not futile because it is like anything, it's use it or lose it. The more you use it, even though it's stressful, like exercise, lifting weights, whatever, it's how manifestation works at this time. Maybe it's not ideal, but that's what evolution is for. We use what we have now in order to, and excuses for the background noise, but I tried to correct it, but at least everything else is working fine. But in any case, we work with what we have to go to a place where we have more. It does not pay to enter despair because we're not where we want to be yet. However, that kind of tendency toward despair is natural. Anyways, I don't want to preach about this, but I was going to actually address something first related to all of these things. Related to the fact that, yes, I'm becoming spiritual, I'm doing all of this, but it's not working, or it's not working fast enough, it's not working like I want it to work. Like the person going to the gym a couple of times and saying, all I'm getting is a bunch of pain in my muscles. What kind of, where's the big super body I'm supposed to get here? And then somebody comes along with a pack of steroids and says, well, take this and this will get you there, and some people learn the hard way that that's not the way to go. But many times we often say the same thing. We're on the same page and we don't realize it because we're not combining reason and intuition. We keep them apart. Something feels good, something feels right, whatever, but it doesn't pan out with our reason. Or something, we can pick something apart and logically organize it, but it doesn't feel right. Again, intuition isn't always congruent with feeling. Intuition can be a mental thing, basically viewing a pattern, but not having a context for that pattern. Where does it fit in? How does it fit in? Feeling actually works as much with reason as it does with intuition. It's just that it's painful because we view it as picking apart something. In reality, we're challenged to both pick apart and put together and view the big picture from looking at all the scattered pieces, like having a puzzle, smash the bits and then being able to do it, how it's supposed to look like. But earlier there was somebody who, after my previous video, somebody made a comment about the spiritual state, about enlightenment. Nobody has a right to talk about enlightenment, for example, because it's a divine state and there are only few people who did this and they gave us a few teachings and we're supposed to follow them. And otherwise, you can't describe this. How dare you call it a high or whatever? And let me just say this about it. The problem is we've established a state that's ideal over there and us being crap over here and nothing in between. Again, this concept of bridges. All of my discussions about the term that I often call enlightenment, because for lack of a better one, I wish I could find another one that people could relate to, but it's convenient. It's not about some ideal state. It's about the big spectrum of experience between where most people are, asleep, and some kind of horizon that as we approach this horizon, we notice that there's more and there's more. We never really reach a horizon and say, this is it, I'm stepping on the horizon right now. That the only way to do that is if there's an abyss after the horizon. That's the way it works. There's always what we can do is expand our territory. It's almost like a horizon is because there's a sphere and you're very small on the sphere, so you're viewing the curvature. So the way that you experience a larger horizon is to grow taller, or go on a smaller sphere that you can handle. Then you actually experience a broader area. The thing is that if you're on a larger sphere, you're going to experience a closer horizon. The curvature, or you're basically going to experience that the horizon is never ending, never ending. Well, that just means that there's more territory to cover, which is a good thing because each step you take brings you to a better place. It doesn't seem like a better place because because we're challenged to grow as we walk. We're growing as we're walking, and we're acclimating to difficult situations because we've been conditioned into complacency. These are growing pains. Again, it's very difficult to talk because, if you're empathic at the same time, because you experience, so big deal. You're not really helping anybody by telling them how difficult it is. So let me put it in a different context. Anything I'm discussing is about a broad spectrum of experience that has to do with moving beyond where we are and approaching a horizon. I am not claiming anything about absolute states, but at the same time, I believe I have experienced states. I'm a very skeptical person. I was trained as a scientist. So when I've begun having certain experiences, I would always question them. And I'm saying, look, I'm not going to really credit this, truly 100% get behind this until I have that experience that I cannot question. And I've had such experiences, where you can say, well, this is just a bunch of chemistry in my head, or it's my wishful thinking, or, there are experiences like that. But to call it absolute or this or that, or you can't really say what it is. God is a human concept, really. It's something to which we relate. If you look at the history or the traditions of mysticism, they didn't really have the word for God in really ancient times. The word deva and all of these words really mean an illumination, a transcendent, something that has been personified. It means opening up to something beyond yourself. It has to do with the meaning of existence, with existence itself. that is beyond your very nature. And as human beings have often done, they've personified their experiences in order to relate to them. Now, one person, you said before, well, God has to be personal. That is very true. However, that personality can only be shrunken down so much into our own human context before it turns into just another ego, before it turns into just another person, and we start relating to it as another person with more of what we consider ourselves to be. That's not transcendence, that's magnification. That's bloating who we are, increasing the gifts without adding more to them. And that can create a distortion. And then we have problems because we're challenged to relate to something beyond our normal adapted dynamics of relation. And why does this create problems? Because all of manifestation, especially on Earth, is adapted to restricted energy states. We need to eat to survive. There's just so much life force on the planet, so we need to take it from somewhere else in order to replenish our own. And then our own gets diminished and goes somewhere else. It constantly circulates and forms, disintegrate in order for this to keep happening. This may be an unsatisfactory state, but it is where we are, and it's an evolving state. We're in the middle of it, and we've woken up in the middle of it as conscious human beings. Where instinct isn't enough, where the ecosystem, maintaining an ecosystem through a kind of law of the jungle, even symbiosis and all these other harmonious things that actually work for a time, it's not enough. The universe reacts to this thing by creating an abrupt change whenever it gets stuck. You have hundreds of millions of years of dinosaurs eating and chopping each other up and building greater armor, and a meteor hits the Earth. You have had 5 extinction events at least on this planet, and now you have had ice ages that's for the past, I don't know, there's a great cycle of 100 million years, and there's another one of 3 million years, another one of 100,000 years. I've mentioned this in the previous recording, I believe, about Atlantis and glaciation periods. But an ice age frees Earth and kind of freezes evolution as well, or restricts it to the equatorial plane. So even life has been kind of compressed, and human evolution is connected to all of that. In any case, we are moving to transcend this. However, we cannot leave it behind as we transcend it. We have to bring it with us. We're taking the horizon behind us and we're strapping it on our back as we walk toward the horizon in front of us. And this way, we end up wrapping the sphere around ourselves in a crazy way. It's almost like peeling the earth off and wrapping it around yourself until you become the center of what the earth represents. And as heaven grounds into you, it will also ground into the earth. This is one of those crazy, metaphors I often use because it's so different and it takes us outside of where we normally view things. The reason that many people internalize and don't get answers is because they keep asking the question and relating to it in the same manner as before, just internally. And we know that if you keep doing the same thing over and over again in the same way, you're going to get the same results. Only, even if you look at it internally, it's still going to give you the same cul-de-sac or dead end. So you look at something like what Neil Dyer said again about why should we fix anything? Okay, I'll say, Neil, I agree with you. There's nothing to be fixed, or yes, trying to fix something, but why is he taking a spiritual issue and applying it exclusively into a mundane three-dimensional matrix restriction? This issue is meant to be first applied in an essential manner within ourselves. You cannot apply something to the world unless you take the principle it represents and apply it to yourself first, in my honest opinion. So if you want to look at something, okay, then stop resisting the way things are. Well, this has to be done from within first. And we can't do it from within in isolation from what's going out, outside of us, because that's our plate. Our plate tells us exactly, because we're outward oriented, even when we're trying to be inward oriented. All our symbols, all our relation, everything, you're just, inverting yourself. The plate tells you really what's going on the inside. You can be internalized by dealing with things on the outside directly if you understand them as a reflection of your inside and are able to sustain that in the sense of, the very difficult experience of somebody contradicting us, taking apart our arguments, our worldview, and then leaving us with, despair. Despair, of course, is our conclusion. And if it's their conclusion, that's their issue. But the thing is, we're not dealing with a problem to be fixed. We're dealing with a despair in response to evolution. Now, we say evolution isn't good enough. Well, if we relate to it in a certain way, maybe it can become better because we're the ones who are helping, evolving, catalyzing, and creating the situation as we go along. Before you can put a form in, you have to master the principle. What is the principle of money? What is the principle of transcendence? What is the principle of creating a harmonized society where free will reigns, but at the same time that is just? Why is there a compromise between the principle of justice and the principle of free will? Is this really free will we're talking about, or is it free will that's afflicted that is causing injustice? Is it really justice we're talking about, or a forcing of a certain balance so we can, stop evolution because it's too difficult because we can't handle it as we are? And we can't change, however, unless we can handle it and do handle it. So this all goes, for me, it goes with the territory. It's like this, take the example of blocking people from, Facebook or your forums or whatever. Um, People often present opposing points of view that are emotionally charged. Essentially, when we meet up with people like that, it is a form of the shadow. Even if it's a relative shadow, the gap between our viewpoints conceals a more absolute shadow because of the pain we feel. The shadow is in the pain we feel from the opposing point of view. The fact that we are being negated by the opposing point of view, which may not be a fact, it's a perception. So we're being negated, our dreams are being negated, all of this. And this is what the shadow really does. It's the negation of our being. It's not a nihilistic peace type of negation. It's a contradiction. That's the pain. It's painful. It's not death as a state that's like sleep or peace. It's dying as a state of basically being torn apart or ground down, entropy, as opposed to our evolutionary tendency. So we're confronting entropy. We're confronting the opposition, not just in terms of an idea or what we believe, but the opposition to our very being. It's just that the other person isn't the one who's opposing us. It's the gap between us that's opposing both of us. And this is true for anyone. So the difficult thing is actually facing that pain, because we keep talking about dealing with the shadow, but we're always avoiding it in everything. And by putting it in actual context, we often say, well, as I'm alone in my room and I deal with the shadow, and we don't realize that we may actually be spending 99% of our energy trying to mitigate its effects instead of, moving more deeply and courageously into a situation. So then what happens? Well, the shadow is going to start increasing the pressure, and we're going to feel it at a different level in the outer world, but it's not going to kill us or be the cop that knocks at our door. It's going to be just the next level. The neighbor comes up and opposes us. The other person on the internet opposes us. There's somebody comes up and contradicts us. Our close loved ones come and contradict us. And so you have the paradox or contradiction of a loved one who is basically tearing down your existence as you feel it. You're reminded through that opposition, which may be well meant or not, but the fact is that through the opposition they felt in you, they're also feeling their existence being torn down. Everybody who opposes anybody in this kind of way that triggers pain, that causes defensiveness, that so-called wounds the ego. Well, it's not the ego that's really being wounded. It's our sense of being. It's our sense of presence in the world. Our sense of presence, which is part and parcel with all of our aspirations, our ideals, our sense of what's meaningful, how we, how we are in the world, in purpose that we have, and all of these things, our beliefs. Whenever all of that is contradicted, we take it personally because we are in tune with our life as it evolves in the world, as we are most meaningfully expressing it. Somebody comes in and they say, well, this guy, this King of Kings, whatever, is really the Antichrist. And that's horrendous. They have a whole vision of how they're going to be screwed. And it's really pain. And in their view, all these well meaning people are marching off the cliff, and it's an incredibly painful experience because it's almost like shit. It's one thing to be screwed by psychopaths, it's another to be screwed by people who are, oh yes, we found the solution, we're diving off the cliff like lemmings. So obviously that's going to freak them out. That is the insecurity of everything that we're facing. And so then somebody else comes along who views this King of Kings as the solution, and he or she experiences everybody who's contradicted them slamming the one thing that can help them. And to them, they're the ones who are diving off the cliff. Well-meaning people are screwing up the world. The road to hell is paved with good intentions and all, which is again incredibly like a betrayal, So two people are actually experiencing the same frustration from two different points of view. They're simply interpreting it in different ways. They're seeing two different sides of the same shadow. The problem is not the argumentation and the mental programming or whatever, or the logic in all of this. The logic is the tool to address the shadow itself, to address this issue. What's going to happen if that occurs? Well, then you claim more of yourself, and when you do go inside, you're going to experience more of an epiphany. You're going to have more resources to discern. You are going to be able to come up with better solutions. And if you can accomplish this mutually with another person who was formerly of an opposing viewpoint, you can come to a position of balance. You can find that it's not you who have opposed each other, but that the shadow that both of you could not readily accept was keeping you apart. And it was also keeping everyone apart from the resourcefulness that they could embody in order to come closer to some kind of resolution. Now, does that mean everything's going to be solved? Well, anybody who wants instant solutions, or well, I want to believe, but it just doesn't pan out, meaning that I'm going to be on the sidelines, and when you have my little chair ready where I can sit and be fine, and give me everything I need, then where you're sitting on the sidelines, you're going to fucking die. You're going to go to shit because you have, not because you haven't gotten out in the streets or you haven't taken a side, but because of this attitude, which is basically where the weakness of Neil Dyer's viewpoint is, because whether he wants to or not, he's actually encouraging people to be apathetic, because people are not going to, exactly, they will not address their resistance. Whole point. They will say, well, there's nothing to, the only reason people express their resistance is because they're trying to fix something and they encounter resistance, and it's their desire to fix something that keeps them stubbornly encountering the resistance. If you tell them to stop wanting to fix something, then their natural instinct to avoid the resistance is going to prevail. Telling people to meet that resistance head on and actually transform it into the momentum of their own evolution is too abstract, and the only way they're going to learn is to keep encountering the resistance until they finally get it, because there's no other solution and it's not going to go away. We have been given a reprieve time. I keep telling friends of mine, and many agree, that you can't perceive it, but over the last so many years, century, who knows what, it's always been going on, but recently it's been happening a lot. The script has been rewritten over and over and over again. The psychopaths have been planning one thing, another thing happened. They've been adapting their plan continuously and always posing it as the original plan. They have been failing, and the fact is they're not giving up, because they shouldn't give up, because if they do, we're just going to go back and curl up into our little ball and then resent it. I mean, it'd be one thing to curl up and say, we can't do anything. We want God to take care of us. But we're going to resent it if we do that, because we're going to feel that we're not living to our potential. And if anybody does live to their potential, we're going to envy them. And because we hate ourselves for not living up to our own potential. This is the quandary we've put ourselves in. Otherwise, we'd be in a paradise where we're taken care of. And it would be a manifest paradise. The problem isn't manifestation itself. Manifestation could be a Garden of Eden where there's enough energy that nothing has to die, but everything will have to be dependent and nothing will be able to create, because initiative takes self-generation. It means confronting your contradictions and embodying them and transforming them into the energy of creation. It means essentially becoming a god, but not in some absolute state, but in the whole bridge from where we, becoming, not being. So, we've gotten ourselves in because we want to be here. And we don't understand that we want to be here unless it's taken away. You go, well, fuck it, I'm going somewhere else. And then you end up back here again. Why? Well, because you're resentful of all the other else's. All the paradises are just, you've ever had a state where you really wanted something and then you got it and it sucked, or it wasn't good enough. I'm sure a lot of people have had that. Many people fall in love. Oh, that's the woman and man of my dreams or whatever, and then they're with them and it's a whole other story. And then they fall into despair. No, you've actually gotten what you wanted, but then you've encountered the contradictions that you're meant to transform. We enter this life and nature bestows youth upon us and life force and energy. And the Taoists say that these very things that nature bestows on us come at a price, because our batteries are charged in order to propagate and create within a very limited time span until we're 30, let's say, and then we start degrading. But nature gives us these things. We become addicted to our youth and expect nature to keep doing it. So we keep instead the mystic says, look, you can fire up your own internal engines, but you're going to have to face everything that's keeping them from firing up on their own. That's what a creator does. A creator comes and addresses the void. You can define God as everything, but then you don't understand much because you have no clue how it all interacts, because if all is one, then there's no relationship. And that's, if you really want to define God as one, as unity, then you have to say, well, God isn't absolute and God isn't perfect because there's no relationship. God without any relationship is really alone, and that's a limited state. If you want to define God as more than that, then you have to add the limited states into the unlimitedness. You have to add this versus that, this with that relationship. You have to add, especially in between all that, you have the absolute state of being and the absolute state of non-being, what they call the void. And Hebrew mystics even say that the void is the dark face of God, or God is both good and evil, basically. But in my opinion, what they mean is that the absolute being, absolute non-being, are both God. But it's very impractical, even for somebody reaching transcendence and learning to become a creator being. Let's forget about the word God. We're learning to become creator beings. And these creator beings have to confront the void, because the void is potential. The void is everything we are not. It all cancels out. There's nothing specifically in there. But when you confront it, because it's a state of negating, just like you have being is a state of affirming, I exist. It's a constant affirmation. That's what existence is. It's a big yes. The essence of existence is a big yes. The void is a big no. But within that no, you end up expanding your frontiers of yes. When you take the no and you embody it and you convert it, you can convert it into a yes. You occupy a former no and you replace it with a yes. You're manifesting something new. It may not be an easy concept to understand, but the point is that in our day-to-day experience, we are all confronting no. We are, when we're talking on the internet, we're confronting no. Somebody always comes up and contradicts. When I address these things, I don't want to, slam the other person's opinion or basically, wrong. However, I want to occupy that no. It's a personal and selfish thing, among other things, but in the sense of me taking that sense that I'm being negated and putting an affirmation for myself in there. It says, well, yeah, you may think this is the case. However, I view this whole expression that I'm doing as meaningful for this and this reason, and thus I understand even better what I'm doing. So we're not trying to just convince other people, or even that. We're basically structuring our own sense of meaning. Why am I doing something, and what am I doing exactly? And if I find somebody opposing point of view, they're not the absolute shadow. Even psychopaths aren't the absolute shadow. However, what opposes us from psychopaths is a far deeper pit than the valleys we encounter with other people who we can empathize with. So these are, again, a hodgepodge of thoughts around all of these things. And many people say, welcome to chaos. And I say that too. Welcome to chaos. And my point about deleting people is that it's not bad. That, however, my suggestion would be to regulate it. And always, when you do any action, know that the world is harmonic, it's fractal, it's holographic, and that any action you do can relate to every other action that you're going to do or have done, in the sense of saying that's what ritual is. An action, symbolic action, represents all these other things. So if I delete somebody from, I might say, okay, there's 5 people that piss me off here. I'm going to delete 4 of them, and I'm going to relate to one of them because I don't have the capacity to deal with that much stress at this time. However, I would like to increase the capacity and increase the influence and increase the truth and create bridges. So I'm going to delete these 4. And so this is in my life, 4 directions that are coming to get me, or 4 antagonistic dynamics, or 4 things like cops or whatever, or taking my house or whatever, that my plate is just too small to deal with all of this, but I will commit to that one. Not because I want to do something for that one, but because I'm going to digest what's on my plate. And thus, but creation can say, look, you need to do more than that. You need maybe 2. You need maybe 3. You can't handle 5, but you're actually, not dealing with enough. And it's not because you can't handle it, but for other reasons. So those other reasons need to be addressed. And if you need to go slower, truly, you go slower and note your own progress. It's like you're your own manager of evolution in a sense. And in that sense, as you continue to go within, you can start noticing things that you haven't noticed before. And also notice the important pattern that when you deal with the shadow even a little bit in something positive happens somewhere. Something positive happens in your own life, and you notice these ups and downs and all of this, and how the ups follow the downs. Because something, even with the amount of denial that exists, something was accepted, and thus, however, the momentum hasn't been gained to transcend the greater hump, and now we're confronted with that greater hump. And everything in our life is pointing toward that, not the really big hump. There's a really big one after that. However, once you deal with a greater hump, the big hump is not going to be that big. And that's how it goes. It's just that we need to pace ourselves with the intention of actually not shortchanging ourselves or withdrawing or using it as an excuse for doing less than we can do. And at the same time, not being hard on ourselves because we are doing the best we can, even when we don't think we are. But now nature is telling us, well, you are doing the best you can, and you want to do better. You're resenting yourself by not doing better. And so you're actually calling for more to come into your life. And this isn't just you as a person, but all of creation that's connected with you. It all comes together. The bigger picture and the little picture are really images of each other. And we can begin learning to discern that. And that doesn't need to be fixed, but we do need to alter some forms. That doesn't mean we're fixing what's broken. It means we're transforming what isn't appropriately shaped for us. And that is what creation is.
35
So
minutes.
I'm not going to drag this on more this time. There's enough about, I believe. Okay.
Well, I've titled it Welcome to
Thank
Chaos.
you for hearing me out, and I apologize if all of this was just a confusing jumble.
That phrase
but
was
maybe
an appropriate title.
Exactly. It is, and all of this talk was just a reflection of all of the chaos I was sensing there. But order and chaos are hand me
So have a good
and they're
evening.
both our friends, and I believe we can make them so even more.